JN Productions continues the Okinawan immigration special, The Year of the Okinawan. In this episode, we will feature the 1989 HUOA study tour to Okinawa. What did you like the best about the tour?
Oh, I think just visiting family, seeing relatives I never knew I had for the first time, and then realizing that we carry on the face of the past generations. Like they say that I look like my father, and they say that my younger daughter looks like her father, and that's real interesting. You don't think about that. And then to visit my mom's family, it was real nice to see them. I think for the uncles that I knew, my grandfather, my mom's father's brother, it was really something for me because I heard so much about them, but I've never met them. We saw pictures and he looked so much like my grandfather. My grandfather passed away 2 years ago, so it was like seeing him again.
The Year of the Okinawan is sponsored by...
The Okinawa Study Tours from Hawaii has been conducted by Nago's Travel since 1983. It has grown tremendously in size and membership since its inception. This year, 150 people signed up for the tour, and it is the largest study tour to date. The tour path taken in Okinawa has been basically the same, and the members are greeted with enthusiasm by government officials, town mayors, and private enterprises. Today, we will feature the Okinawa Study Tour on why it is so popular and more on where the local families came from. It started in 1980 when 37 young men and women were invited to Okinawa by the Shicho Sonjin Kyokai, the Association of Town and Village Mayors in Okinawa. This investment proved to be a wise one, for it is from here that the Okinawan youth of Hawaii began taking a profound interest in the land of the grandparents and great-grandparents.
Everybody getting the same feeling and bringing it back as a group, I think it kind of, how you say, leaked out to the rest of the community to show enthusiasm. Instead of one person going up and coming back, and you see a whole group of people coming back so enthused, I think it kind of encouraged the rest of the people to get active. They got motivated, and yet also a sense of obligation too. I think a lot of us felt that way when we came back. Now we have to give something back because they gave. So I think almost everybody participated in some sort of activity within HUOA.
In 1980, the mayor at that time, Yutoku Toguchi of Nago, was one of the parties who extended the invitation to the young Okinawans from Hawaii.
We wanted the young people of Hawaii to know more about Okinawa, so we were very happy to invite them over. We had them meet a lot of people and took them sightseeing so that they could learn about their culture. This gesture was the catalyst in forming strong ties with the young people of Hawaii. The young people of Hawaii were well versed on Okinawa. In fact, some of them knew more than we did. This initial trip blossomed into a strong relationship between Okinawa and Hawaii. I was very impressed with Hawaii's young Okinawans.
Well, I believe just meeting all these young people, there were 39 of us. I think the average age must have been about 22, and there was some 6 or 7 of us who were in the late 30s and early 40s at that time. But I think the significance was for all of us to really find out about our roots, about our background. There was a lot of apprehension at first because not too many of us spoke Japanese, and when we told us that we were to go to visit our relatives and stay there for 3 days, I guess everybody was wondering how we were going to communicate. But after the 3rd day, when we all came back to Naha and met back at the hotel, you could see the excitement in everybody by meeting their relatives. And I think a lot of times, not just talking, but your body language, your facial expressions, they somehow communicated with all our relatives. And so I think too, the highlight was really for a lot of us to find out where our grandparents came from, made them to be proud Okinawans.
I mentioned this to one of the sponsors, ex-mayor Toguchi from Nago, and I must say that they were very wise to invite young people from Hawaii.
Oh yeah, I think that was the turning point, if I can go out on a limb and say, the resurgence of the Okinawan community here. And seeing the enthusiasm among the younger people gave the old people confidence to turn over the leadership to these young people. And because of that, more and bigger projects came about. And I think that's why we are here today.
And you really have to give them credit, because this was back in 1980, and yet they had enough foresight. Or would you say that it is just part of the Okinawan nature to take care of the next group of leadership?
I don't know. I don't know who got that idea and why. We appreciate what they did, and right now, I'm going to try and push for them to do it again, or if they can do something like this every 10 years, because we are now looking for new leaders. I think the people that went in 1980, we're all getting tired, and we need new blood to come inside. And a project like this would definitely bring out new leaders, new blood.
This invitation in 1980 indeed led to stronger ties and bigger projects between Okinawa and Hawaii. 1983 saw the birth of the first HUOA study tour, and the tours have continued to the present. Though it is run commercially, a lot of goodwill is thrown in by the local travel agent and their counterpart in Okinawa.
Oh, it's so fantastic. It's really enjoyable, and I'm pretty sure everybody's learning through, the tours that we've been to, and to meet all the political, governmental, prefecture.
The 1989 HUOA study tour started off with a courtesy call on Governor Junji Nishime at the prefectural government office. Nishime was not available at the time, so Vice Governor Miyagi welcomed the Hawaii people in his place. HUOA president at the time, John Tasato, exchanged greetings and gifts with Naha government officials.
Okinawa no minasan, aloha. I charibacho de hanaganatu, chua ipe nihei debiru.
The Hawaii group was given a rousing welcome by the Nishihara High School band, who had performed at the HUOA Festival in 1988 and also selected as Japan's best that same year. More gifts were exchanged between the HUOA and Naha officials, and Vice Governor Miyagi went out to greet the senior members of the group. It was also a reunion between Nishihara High School students and the Hawaii people who had taken care of them the year before.
私が平素最も敬愛しておりました。
It was also a sad day for the citizens of Okinawa and those around the world who knew former businessman, philanthropist, and Diet member Ichiro Inamine. Inamine was one of those responsible for the rebuilding of Okinawa after the war. He was also the honorary chairman of the fundraising committee in Okinawa for the Hawaii Okinawa Center.
多くの業績を残されました。
The itinerary included a lot of culture, music, and dance. Tour members were able to watch and listen to professional musicians, and the Okinawans' genuine love for music and dance was clearly demonstrated by both performer and spectator at a recital at the Higashimachi Kaikan in Naha. These performances are set up especially for the HUOA study tour, regardless of the size of the audience. Where admission would normally be charged for such an elaborate performance, the Hawaii group is treated every year to a grand recital by professional teachers and masters. Many of the musicians are familiar to Hawaii and never fail to come forth when doing things where Hawaii is concerned.
もうハワイの会館は我々の会館と同じだという気持ちでですね、参じてまいりました。
Shamisen master Chokichi Terukina is always seen at events planned around the Hawaii people. We asked why he gives so much of his time to this, and he replied that as a child, he remembers all the aid that Okinawa received from Hawaii right after the war. If it's for Hawaii, he abandons even a paying job to come forth and perform. We have seen and heard the auspicious yet solemn Kaja de Fu performed many times over, but were treated to a number right here in Okinawa by a team of professional dancers. It was an excellent opportunity for local lovers of Okinawan song and dance to observe makeup, movement, and style of professionals in Okinawa. There was also audience participation with Akira Sakima joining Terukina Sensei for a sing-along in the likes of Ashimiji Bushi and the all-time favorite Asatoya Yunta. Portion ended with a grand finale by the members performing a taiko dance number. One Naha government section chief with ties to Hawaii is Masayuki Oshiro of the International Exchange Division. Because of his ability to speak English, Oshiro is assigned to taking care of overseas Okinawans whenever they visit. This is indeed a formidable task, even for one who could pass as a member of Japan's Secret Service. We were told that Oshiro is related to the Nagamines of Flamingo Restaurant.
After hearing an academic lecture on Okinawan history at the University of the Ryukyus, members took a lunch break in the school cafeteria. Joining tour members for lunch was University President Agarie himself. Agarie has been a frequent visitor to Hawaii, and this was a chance to catch up with acquaintances.
I learned the friendliness of the people out there, and they are very, very cooperative. And they seems to enjoy making people happy. And I think this is something good that we should take with us, and if we can perpetuate that, that will be a big plus for all of us.
Last year's group of 150 tour members filled 3 buses, and everyone had a great time. A bus ride with Okinawans would not be complete without karaoke numbers led by the group leaders. The first stop was at Takuyama Kanko Park in Onna-son, where they visited a traditional Okinawan village. The Ryukyuans originally had ties with China and Southeast Asia, not only by trading, but through social culture. These relationships gave birth to crafts such as pottery making, dyeing, and weaving. Study tour members got to see a typical old-style home, complete with a weaving loom. Next, they toured the Ryukyu Glass Factory. Glassware is one of Okinawa's industries today, and no matter where they are, ladies cannot resist going on a shopping spree.
I think it was the closeness of the family ties. We haven't seen our relatives for years and years, but somehow when we got there, the love, the comradeship was right there. And it really touched all of us.
I understand that there were several generations of your family on the trip?
Yes, there were 4 generations. And all of us, regardless of the age gap, we all enjoyed it.
Do you think your children and the younger ones had the same feelings that you had?
Yes. I was amazed at my little nieces. They were 9 and 11, and they felt a feeling of belonging. And they said they want to get back to Hawaii and learn Okinawan dancing, and they asked us all kinds of questions.
The bus ride continues on Okinawa's modern freeways. Where it used to take a whole day to reach Motobu and Nago in the north, from Naha, today the drive is just about an hour. Motobu in the north was the site of the Ocean Expo in 1975, held a few years after Okinawa's reversion to Japan. It was here that Japan and Okinawa showed the world that Okinawa was back on her feet again and ready to join the world community. Motobu is where Albert Miyasato's family hailed from in the early 1900s. Albert's cousin, Matsushio Miyasato, is a house member in Japan's Diet.
去った戦争中、大戦中、日本で仏教の勉強をされた。それで日本で終戦を迎えて、戦後ハワイへまた再び帰られたんですね。 ですからあの人はいろんなことを非常によく知っておられる。今確かハワイの西本願寺の
Cousin Albert Miyasato, formerly of Hawaii's Department of Education and aide to Governor George Ariyoshi, is now president of the Honpa Honganji Mission of Hawaii. Miyasato's grandfather was among the early immigrants.
Well, like all people from Okinawa who emigrated to Hawaii at that time, he was looking for a decent job. There was none at home, and they were, stuck poverty and such, and they felt there was a good opportunity. They were recruiting people, so he came over.
したがってハワイでどういう生活をしてこられたか、どのような活躍をしてこられたかというのはよく存じませんが、確かハワイで成功されてお帰りになったんだと思いますよ。瓦葺きの立派なお家を作っておられましたから。
As soon as he went back, he literally put a good roof on his family's head, see, by putting on the kawara tile, and I guess people deemed that a sign of success. If they stayed in Okinawa, that's what they would do if they were successful.
Miyasato was 14 years old when he was sent to Keikoji Temple in Fukuoka. While attending middle school, he learned to chant Buddhist sutras, hence his profound interest and knowledge in Buddhism. And how does he want to remember Motobu?
Yeah, well, when I went, it was way before World War II, and my grandfather was still alive, so was my grandmother. And 5 of us children grew up here, and I'm the eldest. So when I went there for the first time, that was when I was 14 years old, and the war hadn't started yet, and Okinawa was a dark, a real desolate place, way out in Motobu, so far away from Naha, as you all know, way up north. It seemed like we were really way out of this regular world, so different from Hawaii. And yet, being a young 14-year-old, I met with all of my cousins, and I got all my cousins and relatives all in Okinawa right now. We don't have anybody here except our family, Miyasato, and 1 or 2 second cousins. They're all there. So I had a lot of playmates. So in that country, dirt floor, and they built a plank for me to sleep on. I had a grand time. I had good memories, playing, the horses around there, going to the dirty brownish pond to swim in a nearby pool every day. And Matsusho was one of those kids. I was 14, he was about 11 or 12. And he used to follow me around as a cousin from Hawaii. And I have terrific good memories. So years later...
We asked Albert Miyasato's cousin, Diet member Matsusho, to extend a message on the occasion of the 90th anniversary of the Okinawan immigration.
90周年というのはね、大変長い歴史だと思います。そして一番最初に移民された方々はね、農業移民だったというふうに伺っておりますから、大変ご苦労なさったと思います。その後、2世が生まれ、3世が生まれ、今はもう3世4世の時代になったんですね。そして日系人社会の中で、あるいはハワイの州民の中で、沖縄県人の皆さんは大変素晴らしい活躍をしておられる。そして多くの立派な方々が社会で活躍をしておられる。沖縄から見て非常に頼もしい限りです。これから若い人たちは、あるいは一番最初に移民した人たち。幸せなら手を叩こう。幸せなら態度で示そうよ。
The bus ride continues and on to Nago City, a town which has produced scholars as well as contemporary business people. In Hawaii, we identify Nago with the Nagamines of Flamingo Restaurant, attorney Warren Higa, Zippy's, bankers Gene Seki and Lillian Takata, and Tamashiro Market.
Nago City is located on the northern part of Okinawa Island. It is surrounded by lush greenery and a beautiful ocean. Blessed with fruits from both land and sea, Nago is also a prosperous commercial center. Today, the population stands at about 50,000. 205 persons are said to have emigrated from Nago village to Hawaii. This is their city hall, which took 5 years to build and was completed in 1981. As you can see, it symbolizes the coming of a new age. Notice the vents on the ceiling, which allow for fresh air to flow through the offices. According to the organizers of the study tour, Nago City goes all out to welcome the Hawaii group. A party hosted by Tetsuya Higa, mayor of Nago, was Okinawan hospitality at its best, with music, dance, lots of food, and bonsais. Mayor Higa gave us his feelings about Nago City.
名護の特徴と申しますと、やはりハワイの方がみんな言われるわけですが、海があって山が、そしてみんながきれいなところだなとこう言います。そして一番特徴は名護の人が非常に人情豊かであると、みんなに親切にすると、イチャリバ町でヌーヒダチの赤と、これがやはり名護の特徴でございます。
そうですか。今日市役所の方へお邪魔いたしましたが、とっても変わっている建物ですね。
みんなそれがその建物を見ましてユニークな建物だなと、それで自分が言っておられます。それでそのやはり建物はちょっと沖縄でもまあ風変わりというんでしょうかね、はい、ユニークな建物だと思っています。
そうですか。市長さんとハワイとのつながりと申しますと、何かございますかしら。
これはちょうど私がまだ若い頃名護の役所に勤めておりましたけれども、そこを辞めてハワイに豚飼いの研修に行ってみようなということでハワイに行きましてから、ちょうどそれからハワイとのつながりがございまして、もういろいろとちょうど市長になりましたらハワイの広しとのこのつながりができまして、大変幸福に思っております。
そうです。
The people's how the people are, they welcome us with open arms, and I guess I just like being there to visit my grandmother.
Where's your mother?
A trip to Okinawa would not be complete without a trip to King Village, where it all began for the Hawaii immigrants.
This is where it all began, in King Village. In 1895, when the Sino-Japanese War ended, the population of Okinawa increased to 400,000, and many leaders, including Kyuzo Toyama, who later became known as the father of Okinawan immigration, were seriously concerned about this rapidly growing population. At that time, overseas immigration was believed to be the only effective solution to this problem. By 1899, Kyuzo Toyama began to see Hawaii as an even better prospect for future immigration of the Okinawans. As a result of Toyama's tireless, persistent promotional work, 200 young men of different occupational backgrounds from various villages had applied. Finally, 30 young men ranging in ages from 21 to 35 years were selected to become the first contract labor immigrants to Hawaii.
Mayor Kikuo Nakama of Kincho attended the grand opening of the Hawaii Okinawa Center and made these comments.
うちの祖母とか、それからおじおばがハワイにも戦前からおりますので、
My grandmother, aunts, and uncles had emigrated to Hawaii before the war, and I had seen pictures, so was familiar with the place. I was especially moved during the grand opening ceremony because I represent Toyama Kyuzo's town, Kincho, where the emigration to Hawaii began. If all goes well, we may eventually see a statue or bust of Toyama Kyuzo in front of the center, courtesy of Kincho.
Is there anything special about Ginowan that makes you want to go back?
Well, number one, Ginowan said that they're really happy to have the convention hall. Because that's the Okinawan government convention hall. So all the activities, the big activities, and in fact big funerals, yeah, like when Senator, Diet member Inamine Kokuba then passed away. the funeral was held in the convention center. So he's going to, and a pro baseball team practices there every spring.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I guess I have relatives. I have a lot of cousins there. So I guess the affinity, I mean the closeness of knowing that you have cousins takes you back. As my wife said, how come you every time going back to Okinawa?
Another town that the Hawaii immigrants hailed from is Ginowan. Today, it is a bustling center of commerce and activity, and the Ginowan Convention Center, completed in 1987, is among Japan's finest. On the other hand, unpretentious surroundings were fine for Okinawans anxious to meet relatives and acquaintances.
Oh, I'm so happy to see them. In fact, we have others that were supposed to show up, but they haven't come in yet. So I made special lace for them.
Jane Sakima and her friend, Kiku Anya of Ginowan, had renewed their childhood friendship 2 years ago.
やはり懐かしいですか？そうです。もう今で2度目ね、会うの。この間来た時にもね、会ったんだけど。
Mrs. Anya remembers Jane as a robust and well-built girl from Hawaii.
もう体格が良くてね、私たちは小さかったの。これ一番よく覚えてるの、大きかったということ。沖縄は何年ぶりですか？3年ぶり。私前。
This 84-year-old Issei Oba-chan from Hawaii has been back and forth to Okinawa now about 10 times.
一世でいらっしゃいますが、今 おいくつですか？84歳です。そうで、まだお元気で。元気ですよ。まだ90になっても元気ですよ。そうね。楽しいですか？楽しいですよ。そうですか。はい、今おいくつですか？もう86。
私のおばさんです。それでね、18の時に沖縄からハワイ行かれて、それでね、沖縄に今度7年ぶり。
She emigrated to Hawaii at age 18. She's 86 years old and still remembers all her friends, even though 70 years have passed. Her memory is terrific.
たくさん覚えてらっしゃる。だからすごくメモリーがいい。ねえ、だからね、今からまた長生きして、またもう一回沖縄に来てもらいたい。
The two elderly Issei on the tour were in top shape, keeping up with people less than half their age. They had this to say about their native land.
懐かしいでも本当になんだけれど、今頃は沖縄のようにないのに。家でもみんな。
Okinawa had certainly changed from the time they left home, and they barely recognize the place now. Thatched roofs, so commonly seen before, had disappeared along with time. Though tears of joy were shed and old acquaintances renewed, we found the Hawaii Okinawans to be closely in touch with friends and relatives almost on a yearly basis. Ties that bind are strengthened as new generations are introduced to each other. This is the Okinawan way, and their way of keeping the family together. Wayne Miyahira, this year's HUOA president, tells us about his impressions of the tour.
I felt that there was something special about Okinawa only because I had my entire family on my mother's side come to the airport to come and visit me. And at that time, I realized that this was a special place. And during the study tour, I found that while I've brought a lot of people here, I found they have the same feeling. And I could see just from the expression on their faces, the expression on the relatives' faces, that this bond of being relatives and having relatives, even if it's, pretty far by now, we're in the third and fourth generation now, it was a very good, deep feeling to see people get to see relatives and get to enjoy each other.
Camaraderie, generosity, affection. All the elements that bind the family together are found in the Okinawan culture. Have you ever noticed flags waving tall and proud at a local Okinawan event? Almost every town, village, and hamlet, even places that do not exist today in Okinawa, are represented in Hawaii because of pride in belonging, pride in ancestral roots.
what we are today is based on our heritage. Not only what we learned in Hawaii, but what our parents taught us, and our parents brought things over, grandparents brought things from Okinawa to teach us. And it's that special thing, that special thing that our grandparents brought over that made us what we are. And I think we really need to go back and look at, sometimes as young people we forget where we came from. And we need to be reminded of the hard work that brought us to where we are, because we didn't get to where we are alone. We got to where we are because of our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents.
Oroku, Shuri, and Naha in Okinawa, they're one, they're Naha. There's no such thing as, there's Oroku and Shuri, but that's only one government. But in Hawaii, you still have 3 separate groups.
Exactly.
I don't think they'll ever get together. Nago, same thing. Nago, Nakijing, Yagaji, Kenkiabu guys, they're all separate up there. But in Hawaii, I mean, in Okinawa they're together, but in Hawaii they're all separate groups.
No wonder you have so many flags or those banners, the hatagashira, whenever you have these big festivals or gatherings.
I don't know at what generation we're going to be able to say we're going to have one Naha club.
If you look back at the history, you know, there was a lot of hardship. They had to stick together to overcome, you know, like when our grandparents coming to this foreign country, they couldn't speak the language, they were not making enough money, so they had to stick together, so they helped each other with funerals and building houses, those things. And I think that's kind of carried over. And the other thing too, when you're number one, you try harder. So I guess, you know, among the Japanese community, they were looked down upon, so they had to stick together. And I guess it just carried over.
Upon leaving Nago City, the tour stops over at Okinawa's only brewery, Orion Beer. A number of industries in Okinawa were accorded exclusive privileges after the war in order to help them get back on their feet. Orion Beer was one of them. The brewery was established in 1957 and is completely locally owned and operated. Today, they are a prosperous brewery, but will have to relinquish their exclusive brewing rights in 2 years. A HUOA study tour wouldn't be complete without a stop at Jimmy's. The Jimmy Inamine family has always welcomed Hawaii people with open arms. The buffet line looks familiar, doesn't it? With turkey and all the trimmings, and even the familiar Hawaiian Sun juice. We'll do more on Jimmy Inamine and his son Jimmy Jr. in our next feature. We'll leave the HUOA study tour for now, but our travelogue continues.
The ultra-modern Ginowan Convention Center was built in 1986 to accommodate major events and exhibits for domestic and international crowds. Besides boasting a huge parking area, the Ginowan Center is composed of a theater, conference rooms, arena, baseball stadium, and gymnasium, not to mention its proximity to Naha City and the beaches. The old and the new are blended into Naha City, Okinawa's metropolis with population a little over 300,000. Funding from the central government has resulted in public works projects and the construction of roads and highways. The city government, while aggressively pursuing modernization, has not forgotten the importance of preserving culture and the arts. Though very little, remnants of the war still remain in the back streets around Kokusai-dori, their main street. But this too will probably be demolished in time.
Here we are in Kokusai-dori, which leads into Heiwa-dori, Naha's popular shopping area. This area too has transformed into a modern shopping arcade, housing hundreds of vendors. Today, it looks like any shopping arcade in any Japanese town, displaying almost every consumer product available. At the end of the shopping arcade, we find the Makishi, produce and pork vendors. From bentos to lady slicing gobo, to vendors selling fresh nakami and even pig's ears. There's a wide array of fresh meat and produce available every day for the dinner table. Did it ever occur to you that the ishidatami in the popular Okinawan song Bashofu is about the stone pavement on Kinjo Street in Naha City? This area is what inspired a portion of that song, as the view from atop is truly serene, reminiscent of an old castle town.
The restoration of historical sites in Naha has been an ongoing project for many years. Shuri was the ancient capital of the Ryukyu Kingdom. Establishing ties with China in 1372 greatly accelerated the kingdom's cultural and political development. Shureimon has become a symbol of peace after the war, but was constructed about 450 years ago as one of the entrances to Shuri Castle. As you can see, the structure was influenced by Okinawa's ties to China. When members of ancient royalty ventured outside the castle, they would stop at the Sonohyang Utaki sanctuary to offer prayers for a safe journey. Buddhism was introduced to Okinawa in the middle of the 13th century, and as it was popularized, many temples were built. Enkakuji Temple was once described as the most magnificent structure in the state, second only to the castle. Across Enkakuji are the Benzai Tendo Dome and Tenyo Bridge, which was influenced by southern Chinese architecture. The quiet surroundings make it a popular walking path in town. Leaving the city behind, we head south towards Itoman and stop by Himeyuri no To, which is now a tourist attraction. A monument was built here to eulogize 210 co-eds and their teachers, recruited as nurses during the war. Rather than surrender to American forces, the girls retreated to the cave and committed mass suicide. The Japanese Defense Forces had retreated to the south during the last 3 months of the Battle of Okinawa, and it is here that some of the fierce battles were fought. Today, Mabunidake, or Hill 89, is the site of the yearly memorial service on June 23rd. Monuments representing some of the Japanese prefectures in the memorial park are a stark reminder of the gruesome Battle of Okinawa, which had claimed almost a third of the entire population at the time. 45 years have passed, and the Americans are here, on the bases. It is very peaceful. We travel through Okinawa as tourists, and the young generation may ask, what war? For those who experienced the war, it's hard to imagine, but Okinawa 45 years later is aggressively pursuing tourism as an industry. Beautiful resorts and the likes of the Ramada Renaissance are increasing by leaps and bounds and attracting hordes of Naichi tourists. We are so glad to be able to return as tourists, and if you are Okinawan, the joy is compounded with pride and compassion.
We hope you enjoyed the short tour of Okinawa as much as we did. From Naha to Nago and Motobu in the north, Kin, Ginowan, and Itoman in the south, we were greeted with warmth and friendliness and made to feel at home wherever we went. We conclude the HUOA study tour with these comments.
Well, I find the weather a lot to be like Hawaii. Only past few days, 2 days ago was real rainy, but now it's really nice and the humidity is about the same, so it's been really nice, and I really enjoy it. And I think it's probably like how Hawaii was a long time ago, as far as the buildings and things like that.
We found it very enjoyable, and the main thing I want to do is take some of this back to our fourth generation children, and share with them the food, the dress, the shopping, share some of those things and hopefully bring them over.
Shopping. That's modern.
I think it's a pretty nice place. It's interesting to see where my grandparents came from. And I thought it would be a lot more crowded, like Tokyo. But it's pretty nice. I mean, the same as Hawaii.
The people are very friendly, honest, and compassionate. And so we're having just a great time.
It's been almost 19, 20 years since I've been here for the first time, and they have always seemed to have that warm openness, that feeling that we're relatives, even if we're not. But if you're Uchinanchu, this is a good feeling, and they welcome you to their area. The other thing is that I found that our Uchinanchu people from Hawaii have really kept the same feeling about their homeland, which I think is really great. It really showed in the tour that we're on today.
Next week, JN Productions continues its journey through Okinawa and will explore the Okinawan connection.
その当時、佐喜眞明さん。
Why are the Okinawans so grateful to their Hawaii relatives? Why did they come forth and donate funds for the construction of the Hawaii Okinawa Center? The outreach to friends and relatives after the war was a catalyst for this close relationship.
そしてもう本当にそれを大事にしましてね。でそのヤギ豚を増やして、そしてこの住民の生活がですね、スタートしたわけです。幸せなら手を叩こう。幸せなら手を叩こう。幸せなら態度で示そうよ。そらみんなで手を叩こう。幸せなら足ならそう。幸せなら足ならそう。幸せなら態度で示そうよ。そらみんなで足ならそう。幸せならほっぺたたこう。幸せならほっぺたたこう。幸せなら態度で示そうよ。そらみんなでほっぺたたこう。